Blessings, everyone. It's Reverend Aphren with the Four Pillars Temple. So I'm coming to you today because I want to talk about something that's really important to our temple, which is ritual work. Now, if you've been following along with my YouTube page, you recognize that we do focus a lot on ritual work. We do focus a lot on ritual craft, and especially in our temple, I place a heavy premium on the use of ritual in our spiritual practice. And part of the reason why is because ritual is really um, does a lot for us. Ritual allows us to connect with the divine. It allows us to connect with ourselves, and it allows us the opportunity to develop a relationship, not only with ourselves, but with the divine. And so through this relationship, we are able to work magic. Through this relationship, we're able to reach our spiritual depths and gain the things that we're looking for in our spiritual practice, right? So for me, in part of my teaching with our tradition is how do we focus on creating ritual, even if it's not like full ritual, but how do we create ritualized behaviors that can help support us and support our spiritual practice? And so the primary ritual tool in our tradition, in our temple, the Four Pillars Temple, is us, right? We are that primary tool through the ritual, the enacting of ritual. That is really what happens, right? If we're not there, that isn't being done. And so in traditional Wicca, the practitioner is seen as the element of spirit, right? That sort of spiritual component that animates the ritual and allows it to exist, right? Because until we pick up the tools and until we use the tools, they're just sitting there, right? They're just tools, right? So we are the thing that animates the entire process and allows it to happen. Now, some of you might be familiar with ritual gestures. Some of you may even have done rituals where everything is just gesture. I'm not setting up an altar. I'm not necessarily engaging with physical ritual tools. But what I'm doing is I'm acting out and reacting the ritual through my own physical stance and ritual gesture. Now, the use of ritual gesture is not unique to Wicca. It's very common in other forms, um, and there's always some form of ritual gesture or prayerful gesture that happens when we engage in anything in most faiths, right? So think about in Japanese we call it gasso, right, or prayer mudra, right? Prayerful. And so when we're practicing prayer, we put our hands together and we pray, right? Maybe we bow when we pray, right? Maybe we get on our hands and knees when we pray. Um, in certain sects of Christianity, they maybe bow on one knee and do the sign of the cross, for example, right? So these are all parts of ritual gesture. So I'm going to teach you the ritual gestures that we use in the Four Pillars Temple, and we're going to talk a little bit about why we do these. So the we have five gestures that we use predominantly that are grounded in the five elements. And so I want you to think about the ritual tools that we use in magic. In traditional Wicca, we use the athame, wand, the pentacle, and the chalice, right? So those four tools are the four elements. And in our tradition, the focus is on balance. So how do we create balance in our ritual spaces? And so part of how we do that is by making sure that we have all the representations of each of the elements on the altar. But we can use ritual gesture to connect with them. And so remembering just very briefly the purposes of these different elements and these different ritual tools can help us to understand the gestures that we're doing and what they're meant to facilitate or elicit within us. Okay. So the first gesture that we use is what I'm calling the two finger salute. So this is a magic salute, which is with the index and the ring finger, right? And together with the other fingers folded down. And when we do this, this is a gesture of command. So we use this gesture when we're working to focus and direct energies or to command doing any sort of invoking or banishing work. And so what this does is this is a way for us to direct energies. And this carries the same usage as the wand in ritual. So think about what we use the wand for. Now, when we're drawing, say, invoking or banishing pentagrams, you use this gesture, right? And generally, when we're drawing the invoking or banishing pentagrams, we do it with our whole body. So we're not just like beep, 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 right? We're using our entire body to draw that, right? And so a lot of times people will use their physical stance as a way. So it's like the way that we teach drawing of the invoking pentagram is we start at the top and we kind of draw it down. So we're pulling it to us, right? So we start at the top and we go from top to bottom left or to left hip. And then we go to right or right shoulder. And then we go left shoulder. And then we go right hip and then back to the top, right? So we're using our body to um, draw this invoking pentagram. The banishing pentagram is from the bottom up, so we're kind of forcing it away, right? So we start at the bottom left hip, we go right shoulder, right hip, and then back to the top, right? So we're kind of, I'm sorry, back to the bottom. I don't know what I'm doing. So bottom, up, down, left, right, and then back to bottom. So we're forcing that away as we're doing the banishing, right? So what we do with this gesture is we use it for directing energy. So you can use this in any way that you would use the wand. If you use the wand to cast a circle, in the Four Pillars tradition, we use the athame to cast a circle. So you wouldn't use this gesture necessarily, but if you're invoking pentagrams or banishing pentagrams or doing any sort of energy direction, you can use this gesture. Okay. Now you would use it predominantly with your hand, the commanding hand, which would be your dominant hand. So for me, it would be my right hand. For you, it could be whatever hand is for you. So this is the first gesture, the two-finger salute. The second gesture is what we call the flat palm salute. So the flat palm salute is used in various ways and exposes the chakra points that are found on the hands, right? So there are two different ways that you can use this salute. You could use it as um, with your hands up, like you're directing energy in a forward way, right? You could use it up high, so you're kind of directing energy upward. You could use it where you're directing energy downward, or you could even turn the palms up. When we turn the palms up like this, we're receiving, right? So when you put your hands out, you're receiving. So when you're receiving a spiritual gift, when you're receiving a blessing from the divine, you would put your hands up to receive, right? Um, you can also modify this gesture of the flat palm salute by putting one hand up and one hand down. In this way, what we're doing is we are using it as a gesture to um, receive, right? So we're kind of doing this one hand up, one hand down to kind of act as that conduit, right? So we allow our receptive hand up. So by putting that hand up, we're receiving divine energy, and the right hand down, we're sending it down. So we're creating this sort of vortex that allows us to kind of ground, right? So we're doing that. Now, we can use this invocation when we are saluting the guardians. So you could use this to direct, or you could use this to invoke. Hail to the guardians, right? We're invoking that energy into us. Let me see if there's anything else that I want to add on that gesture. You could also use this gesture with palms down, right? So in this way, it would represent the element of earth. So you're kind of grounding, you're kind of sending down. So you kind of put your hands over an object to bless, or you put your hands over an object to release energy, or what have you, right? So both hands down, allowing that to send energies out into the earth. The next gesture is what we call the cupped hand sign. And of course, it looks like this. So when we think of the cupped hand sign, it is obviously to receive, or it could be to give, but the nature of this represents the element of water, and it represents the chalice, right? So when we do the cupped hand sign, what we're doing is we're collecting, just like what the chalice does. The chalice collects things to be blessed, collects things to be distributed, right? And so when we do this gesture, we're collecting. So you might use this to cup your hands to collect energy that you could then use to disperse or to put onto other things. So the cupped hand sign. It's a way of acting, like I said, as a chalice. The item that you place in the hands that you cup would serve as the same purpose as the vessel. So this is the vessel, the cupped hand sign. The next sign is what we call the sword sign. So the sword sign is a really common mudra that you might see in Eastern philosophy as well. And so essentially you take the directive sign, like we did before, the index and middle fingers together, and you do the same on the other hand. But you take your non-dominant hand and you would put it inside like this. So now you have this symbol, this gesture, right? This is what we call the sword sign. And with the sword sign, you're using it in the same way that you would the Aphren. So if you're casting the circle, you would cast the circle in the same way, right? I would prefer the dominant hand on the bottom, right? So you're guiding with the dominant hand, but you're using this, and this can be a difficult gesture to do, but this is the sword sign, and it allows us to not just direct energy, but to maybe subdue, overcome, overpower energy, or to create sacred space, right? So using this, if you don't have an athame, you could use this, or you could simply use this, but using this allows you to activate both hands and to use that sort of powerful overcoming energy to overcome and to subdue, as I said, the energies and make sure that you're directing and creating that sacred space with that. Um, this gesture, of course, as I said, takes the same place as the sword or the athame. Um, the final gesture, or the fifth gesture that I want to mention, is the reverse palm salute or the reverse palm sign. So basically, what it is that I mentioned it earlier, where you would take your directive palm and you would face it down and your receptive palm up. So again, reverse palm sign, right? So hand up to receive, hand down. And generally, this is the grounding, right? This is the one that I mentioned earlier, where you would ground with the pentacle, the pentagram, right? So you just to bring you back. So this would be earth, or this would be earth, right? Um, this would be air, this would be fire, and this would be water, right? Um, and then you could potentially say this would be spirit, right? If you were doing like a spirit as you're kind of receiving the divine blessings, right? Spirit. So those gestures are incredibly important because what they do is they help us to physicalize not only the thing that we're doing, but to also get us in touch with um, the felt sense of ritual. You know, I really believe that as we engage in the ritual practice, that when we're doing ritual, we need to make sure that we're using all five of our senses. And so sometimes it can be hard. Well, how do I get it? You know, I can get the sights with the colors and the candles and everything, and the smells, obviously the incense or the herbs that we're using. The taste, maybe I take a drink of the libation, or I make some sort of a drink or infused drink that I then would consume, right? um, and then of course the sounds, using the ritual bell or using music to help kind of bring that together, or other sounds like dancing or chanting to kind of bring that in. But the felt sense, the physical sense, is something that many of us really struggle with. How can I get in touch with the physical felt sense of ritual, right? Well, I don't know, you know, maybe it's touching a certain fabric or a certain feeling, or if I'm creating a certain charm or object, maybe I can touch. But ritual gesture is a great way for us to get in touch with that physical felt sense by doing these different gestures, right? So you might use the sword gesture when casting the circle. You might use the two-finger salute when you are either invoking the quarters or when you're doing directive work to banish or to invoke. You might use the hands up gesture or the hands open gesture, the flat palm sign when you're doing prayer or when you're doing some spiritual work, right? Like I'm receiving, I'm sending, um, and then you might use the this when you're doing, you could use this for blessing too, like you place the blessed object in your hand, or you could use it when you're dispensing energy or for giving offerings. And then the final one would be for earth. So this or this, right? As a way of grounding. So these gestures are really the crux of some of the ritual work that we do here in the temple, and I really hope that they become helpful for you and you find ways to use them in your own spiritual practice as a way to incorporate that felt sense and to get you more in touch with the ritual process. So I hope that this short video was helpful for you in some way, and I hope that you find a way to use these gestures in your practice. So thank you all for watching, and until next time, signing off for now.